Hello and welcome back to the Jason Goldberg is Ruining Podcasting podcast. Now, before we dive in, I would love to give a huge shout out to today's sponsors. Our first sponsor is sparkling water. If you're dying of thirst and want to make sure that when you drink something it hurts, reach for sparkling water. And oxygen. If you're watching this, you already have it. Moving on. I hope today's show doesn't put you under a spell, abracadad joke, because I'm going to ruin magic. Okay, I felt like that was going to be a lot bigger, like effects and stuff going on. Let's try it again. Today I'm going to ruin magic. Yes, much better. Now, when I say magic, I'm talking about that intangible essence, that seemingly cosmic force that can help us to do or to create or to have whatever it is we want. So if you've ever heard anyone say something like, yeah, I don't even know how they found me. They just emailed me and asked if I'd come interview for the job. Or I was just thinking about wanting to launch a podcast and then my best friend got me a professional mic for my birthday. It was like pure magic. Or anything that happens that you can't really explain how it happened will often be considered magic. From a crazy, unexpected opportunity to be a guest on a massive platform to finding a surprise onion ring in your basket of fries. But see, historically, I've been in between two worlds when it comes to this whole magic thing. So I have a bit of a unique background and experience because I'm someone who spent the majority of my adult life and my career in a corporate job. About 15 years in IT and tech consulting before I launched two other kind of more traditional startups in transportation and technology before moving into the world of coaching and speaking and personal growth and human optimization. And because of that, I've been exposed to some pretty deep programming in both of those areas of how each of those groups believes things actually get done, how big things get created, how we can create something from nothing. Whether you call it leveling up or crushing it or increasing your consciousness or rising up the soul line or whatever the verbal equivalent of a grunting hip thrust is, most humans are focused on doing great things and doing things great, but the method to get there is where these two camps diverge. So in my corporate career, for example, it was all about calculation. It was about strategy. It was about hustling. It was about do the thing, put in all the work. If you want it to happen, it's got to happen through you. Contrast that with the more soul-centered crowds, the ones I've been around a lot over the past decade or so. Those things are replaced with inner wisdom or divine guidance or intelligence or manifestation or soul evolution and magic. Now, this is all really confusing to me because I was very, very comfortable in the go, 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 do, do, do. If you want something to happen, you got to make it happen. So all this talk of surrender and allowing and magic felt kind of irresponsible or passive and even kind of naive to me at first. But see, magic has become such a big part of our culture. There's Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. There's The Magic from the Secret series. And of course, Magic Mike. Biggest mistake of my life. There is a whole movement, an entire group of people who rely on or believe they can evoke or conjure magic, and that magic is what helps them achieve their goals, their biggest dreams, to create the impossible and to do it all effortlessly. Now, it may seem like I'm dogging or belittling the people who feel this way, but I promise I'm not. I don't do right or wrong when it comes to this stuff because I'm a big proponent of if it works for you, why would you do or believe anything else? My goal today is not to talk you out of your beliefs, but instead to help those who wish they had more magic in their lives to see how they can create that for themselves, even if they're a little bit skeptical, like I was coming from the corporate world, or if you're someone who already experiences this kind of magic in your life. What I'm going to share might give you a different perspective that can open you up to a whole new level of magic, adding fuel to the magical fire that you've already been stoking. So me personally, I have been obsessed with magic since I was a little boy. In fact, my father was a professional magician. He vanished completely before I was even born. It's funny because it's true. But don't worry, I had incredible uncles, I had an amazing grandfather, and I was raised by a strong single Jewish mother who was tougher than most of my friends' dads were when I was growing up. And it was actually one of those uncles, it was my Uncle Philip, who's my mom's twin brother, who turned me on to magic when I was a kid. And it started off with like little card tricks and coin tricks, and I was super, super enamored by all of it. And then when I got older, I started getting obsessed with illusions. You know, the kind of stuff that people like David Blaine or Chris Angel or any other metrosexual magician who wears guy liner and leather in all the places that chafe, the kind of stuff they would do. But I knew that their magic was really just sleight of hand or camera tricks or some other elaborate props that made it seem like something supernatural was happening. So when I started hearing people talk about magic as it applies to things like creating a life or a business or relationship that we desire, I couldn't help but think back to my experience of those illusionists and wondering, what if it's not an either or, but instead a both and? What if it's not about being a total bystander on what it is that we want and relying on something outside of me to make it my reality, but it's also not about grabbing the bull by the horns, hooves, and huevos to make things happen either? And that's what I want to talk about today. How to be what I call a spiritual pragmatist to create magic in any area of your life that you desire. Now, what in the Southern California saging the produce at a farmer's market while your pockets are lined with rose quartz is a spiritual pragmatist, you may be asking? Well, let me explain. So I remember back several years, I think it was something around 2016, 2017, I had hired a marketing expert to come in and she was designing a landing page for one of my programs, Playful Prosperity. And so she was reading my content, watching my videos, looking at all the stuff I was doing so she could get a sense of kind of who I was. And what she told me was, you know what, I get you. And I said, well, cool, what do you mean? What do you get about me? And she said, you're half do and half woo. Wrong woo. That's the one. Yeah, half do, half woo, meaning I'm half do. I believe in putting in the work, doing what needs to be done, focusing on the most important thing in front of you and being consistent on it. But at the same time, I'm also into the woo. I believe there's a higher power. I believe there's an unknown, unspoken force that's helping to conspire to create what it is that we want to create. To me, bridging those two things together is what makes you a spiritual pragmatist. Now, before we go any further, let's see if language might support anything I'm saying here. If you look at the etymology of the word magic, it derives from the Greek word magia. Now, I'm probably butchering these pronunciations, but I'm doing my best. In ancient times, Greeks and Persians had been at war for centuries, and the Persian priests called Magosh in Persian came to be known as Magoi in Greek, not to be confused with Magwai from the Gremlins, though strangely enough, you aren't supposed to get either of them wet or feed them after midnight. Weird, I know. Ritual acts of Persian priests came to be known as magika, which eventually came to mean any foreign or unorthodox ritual practice. And this is what ultimately led to it being adopted by magicians and illusionists to describe what it is they do. But there are other meanings as well, because magique in the late 14th century meant, quote, the art of influencing events and producing marvels using hidden natural forces, and the Persian magush, which has a root that means, quote, to be able, to have power. Now, I know what you're thinking. Awesome, JG, you can both Google and read, but stick with me here. Do you see what's happening? As we go down the line and look at the lineage of this word, we see through history that it goes from being just about mysticism and mystery to start including influence and ability, to be able, to have power. To me, that's the definition of being a spiritual pragmatist. It feels like a type of magic that can be learned, cultivated, engaged with, and channeled into something. It feels more grounded, more pragmatic, and maybe even more reliable. Now, am I saying there's nothing supernatural, unexplainable, or otherworldly at play here? Of course not. How else would you explain the popularity of cheeseburgers with Krispy Kreme donuts as buns? There is definitely something going on here that we cannot explain with logic. What I'm trying to point to here is that if we think magic is purely something bestowed upon us arbitrarily by some supernatural force in the cosmos, or that we are in full control of molding, managing, and manipulating the world of form to get what we want, we're missing out on a lot of our potential. Then, what are we to do here? How can we master our magic and become spiritual pragmatists and have our outer world reflect our inner desires? Well, all you need to do is call upon your little sis. Okay, that's not exactly the little sis I'm talking about. I'm talking about an acronym I've created called S.I.S. Now, the first S in sis is space, creating space, to be more exact. There have been multiple times in my professional life. There were so many of these moments that I was so busy doing all the things, and there was just no space for the ideas, for the connections in my mind, the relationships, or the excitement that I felt inside of me to grow. When I started saying no to things and opening up space, which takes a ton of courage to do, by the way, the things I was looking to create started showing up. Now, of course, they didn't come out of nowhere. There were definitely links that I could see between the work I've put in and the seeds I had planted and what was coming to fruition, but they may have never come to fruition without that space. Because just like if you crowd seeds when you plant them in the ground, not only does it discourage growth, it can actually encourage pests and disease. And for us, in our minds, pests and disease could show up as despair, hopelessness, boredom, or just a lack of excitement in your life and in your work. Even for me this year, my intention is another acronym because I love acronyms, and it's SAG, S-A-G. And SAG stands for surrender, allowing, and getting the F out of the way. Now, surrender for me doesn't mean some passive thing where I sit on the couch and hope for the best. Surrender to me is surrendering the idea that it is my job to control and modify and channel every bit of goodness in my world and in the world that I can't explain into what I want to be created. It's surrendering that idea entirely. Still showing up, but surrendering that idea. And when it comes to allowing and getting out of the way, those go hand in hand, because what I've really seen to be true in my own life is that what I'm seeking is always seeking me. But what do I do sometimes when I'm in this place of thinking I need to control everything? When I'm in my corporate world place of needing to go, do all the time and not create space? Well, that's when I get into this place where it's like I'm pushing a dresser and a chair and all of my body weight up against a door that on the other side of that door is exactly what it is that I'm looking for. So this year, my intention of surrender, allow, and get the F out of the way, a big part of that is creating space. Now, if I only did that, if I only created the space, then again, I'm kind of in this place that I mentioned earlier where I'm relying entirely on magic to be created outside of me. But for me in my life and what I've seen in my own life and in my clients' lives, it's actually worked to be a spiritual pragmatist. This is only half of the equation, which brings us to the I in S.I.S, which is immersion. Now, immersion is a word that I love. In fact, one of the flagship programs that I teach to help entrepreneurs build businesses online has the word immersion in it because I love this word so much. And I can really sum it all up by sharing a quote with you from James Altucher. And James Altucher says, "The only way to get good at something is to completely immerse yourself in it. To the outside world, immersion is the same as magic." I love that quote. Immersion is the same as magic. And for me, this brings up a difference that I call between practical magic and practically tragic. Now, practical magic is where that first S, space, and this I, immersion, come together. They're what bridge the gap between what you don't do and what you do, and making sure that what you do is done with real sincerity. Essentially, it's taking the space from that first S to leave an opening for the unknown to occur, and more importantly, for you to be able to see it when it does, while also being highly involved, consistent, and focusing on mastery of whatever skills or insights or mindsets or ways of being that will help you to leverage the magic when it shows up. Whereas the opposite, practically tragic, is about being so locked into doing the most practical and safest thing possible, or instead of focusing on mastery, being a dabbler instead, inconsistent, constantly switching gears, and not doing the inner work required to show up with courage, calm, curiosity, and creativity. Or being consistent, but filling up so much of your time doing it that there's no way for your power and the power of the universe to conspire. It reminds me of one of my favorite Jim Carrey quotes where he says, "So many people live their lives in fear disguised as practicality." That is practically tragic in a nutshell. And there is absolutely a more joyful, creative, and possibilities-based place to come from, even if it's scary or uncertain, but that requires a playful, sincere, and intentional devotion to immersion, to playing the game instead of sitting in the stands. Which brings us to our final S. Now, we've already talked about the universe or a higher power's role in magic and your own personal role in increasing the likelihood that you're ready to notice and to take advantage of the magic when it occurs. But there's one other piece to this that is massively important, and it's the last S, support. Isolation can kill creation. Even though you have the universe and you have magic as your improv scene partner, creating relationships with people on the earthly plane is vitally important. We live in a connection economy. And as much as I love Drake, he's one of the greats, don't at me, bro. He got it all wrong in his 2013 song, All Me. Nothing worth creating that actually made an impact was ever done in a vacuum. It was never done completely solo without some kind of support to either bring it to life or bring it to lives. Make sure as a part of your creating space and being immersed that you are building relationships with actual people. People who are where you want to be or are on the same path that you're on. People who you feel energetically aligned with and people you want to learn from. Share with them about the magic that you're looking to create and the reason that it's so important to you and to others that it be created, because by doing that, not only do you get more clear on your vision and get to refine and build mastery around the messaging of your mission, but you also have the ability to enroll others into that mission, which then has you tap into their magic. You then become a part of their reticular activation system. And when they are out in the world, the neurons in their brain will start to make connections of how what they have access to may help you as well. Now, be as intentional as you can. And of course, I hope it goes without saying, but make sure you're being of service to them as well. Make sure you ask about their vision and let your magic work for them as well. But don't be overly strategic about who you choose to build relationships with. Just put yourself in positions to be around people, whether it's online or offline, that see the world the way you do or resonate with the things that resonate with you. You've had this feeling before, like you needed to talk to this person, to just become friends with them or to get curious about their lives. And you're not exactly sure why, but you just really, really feel that. I'm telling you to follow that. I can't tell you how many opportunities have come my way in my life from people who I would have never said strategically were someone I thought would make those connections. And just to bring it back to the I, immersion for a second, another reason to focus on immersion is because the more masterful you become at whatever it is you do, the more people will want to make those connections and introductions for you, because they get to feel special for having access to such a purposeful, unique, skilled, helpful human. It goes back to Steve Martin's old quote that I love so much: be so good, they can't ignore you. And the last note on support is just to make sure that you are cultivating your own community as well. Your home team, your soul fam, people who are in your corner and will be champions for you. People that will never, ever, ever ask you to play small or to hide your victories or to water down your big vision. They won't play devil's advocate because they'll be too busy being your angels in disguise. Putting these three pieces together, space, immersion, and support, have been huge for me and my clients. In fact, just this past week while prepping for this episode, and now that I think about it, maybe that's my own reticular activation system at work here, but just this past week, I was looking at celebrations and updates from a bunch of my clients about seemingly kind of random opportunities showing up that there was no way they could have created a direct strategic path to get there. There had to be some magic going on here. And as I looked closer and tried to reverse engineer their wins, knowing what we've worked on together leading up to this, I absolutely saw proof of the little sis at play. There was a time for me to teach and guide and coach them towards their goals from an inner shift and outer action perspective. And now they were going from instruction to inflection. From needing to learn strategic steps and practices to having this unexplainable inflection point where they were focused on a particular goal, they put in the work, they had support in their corner, they created space for the vision to unfold, and now are being presented with these magical inflection points. These shifts and opportunities that have been born that may not look the way they thought they would, but gave them the feeling and the outcome they were looking for in a form they may have never been able to imagine. Take some space right after you watch this episode or sometime within the next 24 hours while it's still really fresh in your head and your heart, and ask yourself, how can you call upon your little sis to help cultivate more magic in your life? What courageous choices need to be made? Where might you have to slow down? What belief systems may need to be lovingly challenged and shifted so that you have the mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual space for more magic to occur? What might 5% more immersion look like for you? Where have you been dabbling, and how can you shift into mastery to create the conditions for more magic to occur? Where would some intentional focus being poured into a singularity of purpose set you up to be so good they can't ignore you? Who would you love to connect with? Who inspires you with what they're doing and who they're being? Who can you reach out to and just get curious or celebrate what they are up to and share what you're up to as well? Who can you be of service to with zero expectation of reciprocation, but just because magic is often received for yourself by helping to be a creator of it for others first? Who in your community can you reach out to ask to be a scene partner, along with the universe, of course, to help you stay in the wow and to shine your light bright in the world without feeling judged or worrying about looking boastful? Now, before I go, I want to tell you a little story about a man named John. Yeehaw! I know it sounds like a country song, but I promise you it is not. See, John is a man who found himself in serious financial strife. John's always been a man of hope and faith, and so he prays so hard to God in his deepest and most sincere way he knows how for help to become free from the burden of all of his money struggles. God, I need your help. I'm going to lose my house. My family and I will be homeless. I don't know what to do. If you could make me win the lottery just this once, all of our problems would be solved. Now, lottery night comes, and sadly, John is not the winner. Things quickly start to spiral down. John gets laid off from his job. The home is foreclosed on. And to make things even worse, his wife leaves him and takes their 2 children with her. After each traumatic experience in this series of unfortunate events, John pleads with God to let him win the lottery, but he never does. Finally, broke, hungry, and living out of his car, he tries again. God, please, my life is a wreck. I have no food, no home, and no family. Please, I implore you, let me win the lottery just this once so I can turn my life around. Suddenly, a flash of light rips and rumbles in the sky, and the voice of God echoes down from the heavens. John, meet me halfway. Buy a ticket. Don't be like John, guys. Don't sit on the sidelines and wait for the world to choose you or for magic to appear, but also don't step on the universe's toes and try to command and control everything into creation. Be intentional. Get involved. Do your best to play improv with the universe and be a good scene partner. Call upon your little sis and watch the magic unfold. That's all I got for you today. If you love this episode, as always, please rate it, review it, subscribe on whatever platform you're watching it on, screenshot you listening to it, throw it up on IG and tag me, and I'll make sure to show you some love, and DM me with any feedback or anything you love for me to ruin here on this show. And I will see you back here again next week. Sending you all tons of love. Until next time, peace.